welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Now, today's video is going to capitalize on what I discussed yesterday, and that is the mid slots. Their advantages in the forms of pros, their disadvantages in the means of cons. I discussed it yesterday when I talked about each of the mid slot types, and now I'm going to explain their usage in fleets. Now, in a fleet, the first thing in your mid slots is going to be electronic warfare. Generally, electronic warfare is used to gain a slight edge on your enemy weapon systems. That is why it is not good to play the one trick, one doctrine build. If you have a single line ship, a single type doctrine, these are always very useful against you. Example, if you're going to use full long range in your fleet, all I have to do is use a tracking disruptor against you. It reduces your ability to track, it reduces your damage on targets, it also increases your miss factor. So you're going to miss more often, you're going to glance more often, and even with a tracking computer added to your side, you're still running into the massive disadvantage of those disruptors. So that is the one reason why you don't want to have an all-range fleet. Obviously, they still have to close in on distance and attack you, but as they close in, you still are taking a larger and larger effect from those disruptor weapons. Now, same applies for guidance disruptor. The only difference with that is all missiles are highly effective on close range, so you don't want to enclose to the max distance for maximum effect unless you are fighting against torpedoes. So yes, if you are fighting somebody with medium missiles, the guidance disruptor isn't going to help you. They're going to fall to a medium range and they're going to destroy your ship. If you're fighting somebody with torpedoes and you do hit them with this particular guidance disruptor, you reduce their range to such small figures that they can't maintain the orbit. And it becomes a very easy win for you because they also have a massive reduction in damage, and those weapons that are already under 1000 DPS won't be so effective against you in close quarters with the reduction being placed on. So you can use that to your advantage. Now, moving on, there are other weapon slots. There's your Weber fires. Weber fires are great for countering drones. They're also great for countering close range brawlers. They improve your damage to the enemy ship, so it is a very good thing to have on your vessel. Brawlers always love using Weber fires to hold an enemy in place. That allows them to do more DPS to them. So if you are going to go up against a brawler, switch out to Weber fires, put the Weber fires over any other slot inside that fleet, and you now can take on brawlers quite efficiently. Most fleets will only require about 2 members to run any type of high-end counter-offensive mid slots. Now, when it comes to a fleet, I'm still talking about 10. That's your squad within your fleet. Every 10-man team should have 2 players running regular defensive mid slots, while the rest of your team should run group mid slots so that you don't have to run the formation of putting a logistics into your squad. Remember, a logistics ship will impact your squad in the following way. One logistics ship reduces you by 1 max DPS ship being removed. Mid slots give you the full impact of your logistics. They also still leave you with enough of an edge that if your 2 players are your FC who are running regular mid slots, they can target paint and increase you to maximum DPS. More than 2 target painters doesn't help, as I said, against anything more than a small vessel. Now, this is just the beginning of this entire discussion. There's things like warp disruptors, warp scramblers. The reason why I'm not so worried about them in the context of fleets is because generally the DPS you output is so large that if a person doesn't jump out the moment their shield is gone, they generally destroyed. And if they decided to run an armor doctrine, the moment their armor doctrine is no longer in effect, their ships are likely to be destroyed. They don't really have that chance to run unless they're running frigates, in which case it doesn't make much of a difference because they were already on the back foot to start with that fight. Now, moving on below this, you're getting all these dampeners and tracking modules. Let me just open the virus tracking. As you can see, it has a very close range deployment. It's under the 50k mark. That tells you that obviously if you have a very long range ship like my Naga, for example, with 80ks, you can stay outside of this disruption radius and it won't affect you throughout the fight. No matter how effective it is, you just have to keep that 80k radius and knock out the ships who are running disruption, and then knock out the rest of the fleet. Makes it an easy win for you because you won't be affected by these implementations. Nosferatu. Now, Nosferatu is a very important mid slot. It will help you on one condition in a fleet, provided you brawling in close range with the requirement of heavy capacitor. That is the time when you use a Nosferatu. Now, if you are using a mid-range vessel, Nosferatu isn't really of purpose to you. If you're running anything that stays outside of its close range combat capability, and let me just go with the medium because most of us are medium. If you look at this, it's around a 15-kilometer radius. Now, with the research into electronic warfare and into all of the units, it should give you something closer to 25 kilometers at maximum. So 25 kilometers is good enough for a mid-range vessel, but it's not where you want to be unless you are running that particular weapon. Let's say, for example, medium missiles. I want to be at 40Ks, so a Nosferatu will not be useful for me. If I am rapid missiles, if I have completely researched the neutralizers and the Nosferatu, gaining that max of 25Ks, it is a good slot placement. So yes, then I could use it. It's going to help me keep my brawler fit. If I am using torpedoes, 100% perfect, it is brawler fit. Now obviously you can swap that out for your respective ships. Cannons are auto cannons for the close range. You understand what I'm saying? So that's exactly where I'm going with this. Now neutralizers aren't as efficient as Nosferatu. The only time you use a neutralizer is when you want to knock out the tank of another team. So it's a counter to brawlers. If you're fighting a lot of brawlers, you can always put this as your 3 slot. So you have your third slot as a neutralizer, and you hit the brawler really hard with the neutralizer to capitalize against their cap. The moment their cap reduces too far, they have to pull out of the close range. If you run a Weber fire on your fleet, you can web them and keep them in very close range and destroy that ship before it manages to break the outer limits. Okay, now shield field modules are only for guardians, same with armor links, and I'm just going to talk about the rest of these group variants, right? Group transmitter, group capacitor, and group repairs. So group transmitter and group repairs, they're very useful for your fleets. When you're in fleets of 10, always make sure that at least 8 out of the 10 run at least one of these. So in other words, if you are 8, 4 of you running shield repair, I'm just going to go to group shield booster. Remember, you can run large. It isn't going to benefit your enemy. It's just a heavier fuel cost. If 5 of you run this, the amount of recovery going on for your vessel is so huge that it beats putting on shield extenders. It's greater than 3 or 4 people recovering shields on all the ships put together. If you count it, 4 of these is equal to 4 regular medium shield boosters. So 4 times, I'm just going to make it 400. That's 1,600 every 20 seconds. 1,600 every 20 seconds. So 20, 40, 60, every minute is about 4,800 recovery of defense. And if you are doing it inside a shield field, that's a massive advantage. The main ship doesn't take that much of damage and you're holding it steady. Plus they can benefit with their own shield regen, with the double shield regen if they're going that method. And they within the same class as you at this point. They're pulling in 600, maybe 700, and there you go. 700 to your 1,000, your 4,800 in that minute. It's a massive increase. They supplementing the damage they take with your group shield field assistance. Sorry, not group shield field, group booster assistance. Same would go for armor repair. It's like putting an armor plate on your vessel. And within that large range capability, it can really delay that point of losing your vessel. Remember, the moment your armor goes down, generally your hull is destroyed in a matter of seconds. That's because you're facing overwhelming fire. Now, in the form of the group capacitor, the reason why it is so important and why it plays such a big role when using it is because it's benefiting the entire fleet. Everybody can benefit from this one slot weapon. Now, let me just go down all the way. Obviously, I know that C-type isn't available. I know that you can only get MK7s at the moment. Now, judging it at 307, if you have to go and take this 4 times up, that's 1,200 gigajoules per second. 1,200 to 10 ships is 12,000 gigajoules. Now, obviously, it's already worth more than the amount of fuel you're burning because you're using it in the squad. It's giving everybody the advantage. Everybody can stay alive for a little bit longer. Weapons can be overused. Your mid slots are just benefiting you non-stop at this point. And beyond all of that, you also have the ability to engage with higher firepower. You can go full weapons blazing. You can activate all your low slots. You can activate ridiculous things like damage control units whenever they're available. You can put on your shield extenders. You can put on your shield boosters non-stop. And you are sustaining the fleet at this high level, and they're never going to drop. Even with a large shield booster on that ship, you're countering it. And it may be every 30 seconds, but every 30 seconds is a massive boost to that vessel. So in a Naga fleet, there you go. Your massive recovery for your shield is counted. You are there, you're actually moving up piece by piece till you are such a threat that they can't beat you. Now, overall, everything I've discussed about these mid slots does make a big difference to your fight, and it can mean the difference between you having to have to run a logistics vessel in your fleet or not running a logistics vessel. Sometimes these mid slots can be as effective as a shield field. That's how powerful they can be. But obviously, stacking them with the shield field makes the shield field even more invulnerable to damage. And with all of this being put together, if you change from a MOA Guardian to something like a Nightmare, it makes it impossible for the enemy fleet to really gain that edge on your fleet. They have to fight you in the hardcore battle for a prolonged period of time, and that's the whole idea. If you upscale with the correct mid slots, your doctrines become more powerful. And that is the one thing. Your mid slots play a bigger role in combat than they actually seem to play for most fleets. When you're playing big fleets, here's the one thing. General mid slots no longer play the same role. If you overdo it with Weber fires, for example, once a ship is less than 50% slower than you, it doesn't really make any difference. So let's say, for example, there were 10 of you with Weber fires, and the ship started off at 1,500 orbital, right? 50% for each one of you going 10 times. You're dropping it to 750. You're dropping it to 375. You're dropping it to just lower than 190. You're dropping it again to less than 85. And you only needed it at 180 at maximum for your 300 meters per second to actually play a difference. But nonetheless, you kept going, and your DPS stayed the same no matter what, because that ship was reduced in speed, but all the DPS that's being applied is being wasted because of the excess number of Weber fires. Obviously, if you're facing off against a full brawler fleet, you can lock multiple targets and 2 or 3 targets at a time and finish them off one at a time, and get through them a lot more efficiently by using the Weber fires. But against a drone fleet, not really much of a difference. Against a regular fleet who's mixed match, not really much of a difference. So make sure that your mid slots change between ships. Your low slots can generally be the same for an entire fleet. It won't make that big of a difference. let's just talk about it from a perspective that I've seen with a lot of the corps recently. A lot of the corps started to jump into using these group bonuses. That's because they noticed how much more efficient it makes fights. Now, I started it because one player suggested it to me. And when he suggested it to me, he said, this way we don't have to run the logistics all the time and we can keep our ship stable for a little bit. I never thought of it until that point that it circumvents the need for the logistics. Since it doesn't require a logistics vessel, which I never thought was possible, I used it and it turned out working out great for me, and I've used it ever since. I've been interfering with it, making it better. Now I can almost solo something like a bad hair day if I have to. That's how powerful these mid slots can be, just changing that vessel. Example, my Drake can never solo a bad hair day. It is incapable of taking on that final wave. However, my Naga, on the other hand, has enough firepower to take on the entire final wave of a bad hair day. It can take on all the elites, it can take on all of the other ships. I just need to dock in for repairs every once in a while. And that's not a weakness of my vessel or weakness of my mid slots. It's a weakness of some of the equipment that it's equipped with. I have underfed it on my engineering side. I don't have the auxiliary 3 thruster. If I did, I'd have more damage resistance. I don't have enough semiconductor control. I'm using semiconductor 1 instead of semiconductor 3. That's a major boost in my capacitor. If I had that, I'd have a higher recovery. I'd also have more capacitor to use on keeping my shield up. So another one of the down factors for me. I also don't have the right weapon slots on. I only have 3 C-types on the entire ship. My group healing is at the max that I can do. My tracking computer is mid-tier at best, needs to go up all the way. My weapons are low entry-level faction tier instead of C-type. So all of that works against me. That's how come I would require to repair in between those fights. If I was running C-type, I'd be about 25% more efficient on damage. If I had the right amount of gear on my engineering, I'd be faster, taking less damage, and my capacitor would be larger with more recovery per second, making me more stable at a higher level. So it's all my shortcomings that make the ship incapable of its best output. And with it having these mid slots added, it adds a little bit of extra stability that I'd want. It now will counter the effect from activating micro warp drive and shield regen at the same time. I can support one of the two with my mid slot. Makes a big difference. I don't have to get up close and personal against a fleet of 30. I don't have to run into disruptors. I can take out ships with the long range combat style. I can run drones. I can run Weber fires. It makes every different. No, sorry. I can run drones and I can take out small ships while they get too close. All of this becomes advantages to me for the prolonged battle. Now, those are all of the key points to how you can use them in fleets, and there is also a little bit of a key point on how good they can make your solo play. Remember, this here means that you're not requiring to repair so often. The cost to a mission isn't as high as it would naturally be. I hope that you all did enjoy the video. Catch you all in the next one.